Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Once again, welcome to the Kenya Civil Aviation Authority stakeholder engagement on the draft Civil Aviation Regulations 2021. This afternoon, we continue from where we left off in the morning. In the morning, we handled the operation of aircraft, commercial air transport, aeroplanes regulations, instrument and equipment regulations, operation of aircraft, general aviation. We also had a recap of the air operator certification and administration regulations. So this afternoon, we have two draft regulations to consider. We'll be looking at the draft helicopter operation regulations, as well as the air services regulation, licensing of air services regulations. So joining me this afternoon on the journey to understand or to discuss the draft civil aviation helicopter operations regulations is one of our flight operations inspectors, Lieutenant Colonel Retired Charles Mutai, and he will be going through the changes that have been proposed in the helicopter operation regulations, and then he will also discuss some of the already received comments before we open up the floor to receive comments from the rest of the plenary or those who are present. So once again, we invite you to join us, and I'm sure if you have a challenge on joining us or if you have any question, we will use the question, ask the question button to ask our questions, and then we can proceed from there. We will also be requesting those who are having a challenge joining us to just go back to our KCA website, follow the link, and you'll be able to join us. So Colonel Mutai, you have the floor.
Ladies and gentlemen, today I'm going to take you through the draft helicopter regulations 2021. We'll start with the regulation 2, that is the interpretation. That is, we start with the Serial 2, the agreement summary. This one we amended to be in line to transpose with the provisions of Annex 6, Part 3, Chapter 1. The same applies to Serial 3, 4, 5, 6, and then on the fatigue management, that is FRMS, or we amended them to transpose the provisions of Annex 6, Part 3, that is the helicopter operations. The same applies to the ADFR and the LVO. And then on the maintenance, the meaning of maintenance, we amended it to transpose the provisions of Annex 6, Part 3, Chapter 1 also. Maintenance release, we changed from the CRS to maintenance release, that is to transpose with the provisions of the Annex 6, Part 3. The rest period means, as indicated on the new amendments, to transpose with the Annex 6, Part 3, Chapter 1 also. Then we added a new regulation, that is the application, that is the title. It was created to transpose the provisions of Annex 6, Part 3, that is Chapter 2. There is a new sub-regulation, that is Regulation 5.4. It was also inserted, sub 4, to transpose the provisions of Regulation 6, Part 3. Then we have regulation 5.6, safety management. It was deleted because it's a repetition of regulation 6. Regulation 12.3, we added the word data. It was amended, transposed to the provisions of Annex 6, Part 3. The next regulation is we amended the helicopter manufacturers to include the word data to make it read sense. On regulation 15.5, it was during the drafting, the use of brackets was removed to include certain changes in the elevation. On 16.3, there is a new subpara, which is I and J. This was also inserted to transpose the provisions of Annex 6, Part 3. Regulation 21, Charlie, we removed certificate of release to conform with maintenance release as per the requirements of Annex 6, Part 3. Regulation 26, refueling with passengers on board for rotors turning. We amended to transpose the provisions of Annex 6 by removing the or replenish oxygen. There's a new sub-regulation, which was also, that's 27.2, which was inserted, sub-regulation 2, to transpose the provisions of Annex 6, Part 3. On regulation 26, there was a problem of renumbering. It has been renumbered from 2 to 6 to reflect the new insertion. And on 28, it has changed to 29, regulation 16 to read regulation 17. And then after the final table, it will be amended accordingly. Regulation 30 was also amended to 31. It was amended to transpose the provisions of Annex 6, Part 3. Regulation 35, we removed should to include shall. Then on this regulation 4 becomes 6. That is the numbering for 1 into 6, where the authority permits IMC operations in performance class 3. Such operations shall be conducted in accordance with the provisions of the regulation which is going to be amended there. That regulation 42 also is going to change. The title here has been amended, 41. And then on 41 also down there, remove the word inclusive. The operator shall ensure that the helicopter is maintained to meet the required standards of the state of design. In regulation 41.5, it has amended to read, the operator shall ensure that the performance information provided in the flight manual indicates that the standards of the state of design before commencement of the flight and can be complied with for the flight to be undertaken. That was to transpose the provisions of Annex 6, Part 3, 3.2.5. There's a new sub-regulation 7. New sub-regulation 7 says the factors specified in sub-regulation 6 shall be taken into account directly as operation parameters or indirectly by means of allowances or margins provided in the scheduling of performance data or in accordance with the performance requirements of sub-regulation 1 with which the helicopter is being operated. Regulation 42.6, the regulation reference has been amended.
Sorry, I think we're getting communication of intermittent audio for our participants. Just give us 1 or 2 seconds, 2 minutes, we fix this. Just 1 minute, we fix this. Yeah, this. So as we fix the communication issue, just to make sure you're getting us 5 by 5, we can continue asking questions. Like we said previously, you are able to download the document being projected. If you can be able to download the document being projected, then you can probably move ahead of us and ask and prepare your questions so that by the time we get to the questions section, we already have questions that can be addressed. So the document being presented is as big as 167 pages. So I would advise that you download the document. You can download it directly from the presentation as we're seeing it. I can see Colonel is back, so let Colonel Mtai continue, but I would advise to download the document, and if you can, begin to consider the questions and post the questions for our consideration. So Colonel Mutai, you can go ahead.
Audience, sorry for the delay. There was intermittent delay. We go to the second schedule. That's in regulations 43 and 44.2. The numbering is going to change, and that will be confirmed with the table later. On 45.4, there is a change where it is written a helicopter operating manual to be a helicopter operating manual for each aircraft type. It had said on the other side helicopter type. Now it's for each aircraft type. That is a change to transpose to the provisions of Annex 6 Part 3. On regulation 47.1, it is moved to 48.1. All helicopters intended to be flown over water shall be fixed with a permanent or rapidly deployable means of flotation so as to ensure a safe ditching of the helicopter when engaged in offshore operations or other overwater operations as prescribed by the authority, not by the state of the operator. Then there is a new regulation 49 inserted to transpose the provisions of Annex 6 Part 3. There's a new regulation, sub-regulation 9, that that will meet the requirements of Annex 6 Part 3, which has been inserted to transpose the provisions of Annex 6 Part 3 4.5.2.7. And then 48 is about the brackets which have been removed, amended, and incorporated in the text. And then there is a new regulation titled All Helicopters on Flight Over the Designated Land Areas, which has been inserted to transpose the provisions of Annex 6 Part 3.4. There's also a new regulation 54, helicopters when carrying passengers, significant weather detection. The new regulation 54 to transpose the provisions of Annex 6 Part 3 4.10, which says helicopters when carrying passengers should be equipped with the operative weather radar or other significant weather detection equipment whenever such helicopters are being operated in areas where thunderstorms or potentially hazardous weather conditions regarded as detectable may be expected to exist along a route, either night or under instrument meteorological conditions. There also a new regulation 57, helicopters required to be equipped with a pressure altitude reporting transponder. This will create the new regulation to transpose the provisions of Annex 6 Part 3. There's also a new title, Vibration Health Monitoring System. It was created to create a new regulation to transpose the provisions of Annex 6 Part 3. Then title Efb Operational Approval. The operation amended to read specific. EFB specific approval. In approving the specific use of EFBs, the authority shall ensure that, and that was put to transpose the provisions of Annex 6 Part 3. And then 61.2, it was changed from a helicopter to read aircraft. There's a new regulation title, Operators Maintenance Responsibilities. This new regulation is started to transpose the provisions of Annex 6 Part 3.6.1. There's also a new title, Operators Maintenance Control Manual. This also was put to transpose with the provisions of Annex 6 Part 3.6.2. A new regulation title, also Maintenance Program. This new regulation is started to transpose the provisions of Annex 6 Part 3.6.3. This says an operator shall provide for the use and guidance of maintenance and operational personnel concerned a maintenance program approved by the authority containing the information required by Regulation 72. There's also Regulation 71, which is a new regulation titled Maintenance Records. The new regulation is started to transpose the provisions of Annex 6 Part 3.6.4. Reg 72 is also a new title, Continuing Airworthiness Information. It was also inserted to transpose the provisions of Annex 6 Part 3.6.5. That is concerning operator of a helicopter over 3175 kilogram maximum mass. Regulation 73 is a new regulation titled Modifications and Repairs. It was also a new regulation set to transpose with the provisions of Annex 6.3, the same with the 74 maintenance release. Regulation 67.3 has changed to 81.3. This is the requirements of the 6th calendar month. It's amended to 12th calendar month to tally with the PEL instrument flight rules requirements as amended. This is a new sub-regulation for 70 in operation of aircraft regulations, regulation 204. And then regulation 73 was amended as per the requirements of Annex 6 Part 3, Part 9.3. A maintenance program for each helicopter as required by regulation 55 shall contain the following information, and goes on like that. Then there is a new regulation title, that is Journey Logbook. That is going to be regulation 88. The regulation is started to transpose the provisions of Annex 6.3. And then 81.2, the training program requirements for flight crew instructors shall be as contained in the third schedule. It has been amended to read the fourth schedule. And 84A, where it is reading aircraft, it has been amended to read helicopter, both A and B. Same to 85. And then 87, the third schedule goes to fourth schedule. There's a new part, that is part 14 on security. This is a new regulation titled Helicopter Search Procedure Checklist. The regulation is started to transpose the provisions of Annex 6 Part 3. There's also a new title, Training Programs. The regulation was also inserted to transpose the provisions of Annex 6.3. Also followed by Reporting Acts of Unlawful Interference. This also inserted, it's a new regulation inserted to transpose the provisions of Annex 6, Part 3. Part 8, that is, Part 13, Helicopter Maintenance Commercial. This has already been captured in Regulation 69 to 71, and this has been deleted. And then Regulation 1121, which is, it has changed from 94. It has been amended to address the general helicopters requirements for dangerous goods. And then Regulation 95, which is now 113, the regulation has been amended to transpose the provisions of Annex 6, Part 3, that is Section 3.1.3. That a person shall not use psychoactive substances as specified in the Civil Aviation Personnel Licensing Regulations and Civil Aviation Rules of the Air Regulations. And then 100, which is now 118 Charlie, any necessary maintenance has been performed in accordance with these regulations. It was removed to read the specific part of the reference, particular regulation. Maintenance responsibilities, Regulation 118. It was amended to transpose with the provisions of Annex 6, Part 3.6.12. This again, which is on the Part 3, when the certificate of release to service changed to when the maintenance release is, so it has been amended to read maintenance release. The same to 119. Part 15, exemptions, general provisions, offenses, and penalties. It now reads Part 15, exemptions, general provisions, offenses, and penalties. Title applicability. There's a title change, read applicability of Part 16. Instrument and equipment, which we saw this morning. There's what we call portable fire extinguisher helicopters. This regulation was inserted, Regulation 52, to transpose to the requirements of Annex 6, Part 3. Which reads, a helicopter shall be equipped with fire extinguishers of a type which, when discharged, will not cause dangerous contamination of the air within the helicopter. This regulation 20, this is new. Insert regulation 70 to transpose the provisions of Annex 6 Part 3.4. This will be formatted. The passenger information signs, Regulation 71, amend 71.1 to transpose the requirements of Annex 6 Part 3.4. Then Regulation 76, which was amended Regulation 76 to transpose the requirements of Annex 6 Part 3.4. Then the flight data recorders, helicopters, it was amended Regulation 40 to transpose the requirements of Annex 6 Part 3.4.2, that is commercial, and 4.741 for general aviation. Flight data recorder duration. It was amended Regulation 41, Annex 6 Part 1, read 6.3.1.3 and Annex 6 Part 3, 4.3.1.3. That is on the FDRs. The CVR regulations, CVR duration on helicopters again. The old text was deleted to transpose with the provisions of Annex 6 Part 3. The Regulation 10 is new. It was inserted, Regulation 10, to transpose the provisions of Annex 6 Part 3. The same with the Regulation 77, emergency power supply, to amend Regulation 77 to transpose the provisions of Annex 6 Part 3. the regulation 47 on exits, it was also amended with 47.1 and 2 to transpose the provisions of Annex 6 Part 3. Then regulation 47 3 to 9 to amended regulation 47 3 to 7 to transpose the provisions of Annex 6 Part 3. And then it's going to be renumbered. And the regulation 38 flight data recorders, it was amended regulation 38 with 1 to 7 to transpose the provisions of Annex 6 Part 3. And then we come to the end of the presentation on helicopter regulations. Unless you have any questions, maybe back to the moderator. Then we can.
Thank you, Colonel Mutai. I think, ladies and gentlemen, that is a snapshot of the changes that have gone into the Civil Aviation Helicopter Operation of Regulations 2021. Some of the earlier received comments include a comment on the table of contents, which we will address. As you can see, there's been a bit of renumbering in the regulations and provisions. That then implies that the table of content would be adjusted. We also had a comment regarding the formatting, and I think we will work on that. There was a comment regarding under the interpretation definition of FOO or FD, flight dispatchers. We will address that. We will look at it and the need for its inclusion in the interpretation part. Then we also had a comment regarding the application, requesting that aerial works be included as part of the application of a helicopter operation. That's to be considered. Like Colonel Mutai had indicated, a number of regulations have shifted, and Regulation 83 had a schedule, which is now the 4th schedule. So having received your written submissions and we acknowledge the same, we would like then to open up the floor for anybody who has any question, or if anybody would like to make a verbal intervention. We've received a question from Baraza on the chat. He's asking whether for helicopter operators, these regulations replace operation of aircraft regulation, or do they have to use both? And I think the response that has been provided there is that for operation of helicopters, then these would be the operative regulations, because these regulations have been made to transpose the provisions of Annex 6 Part 3, which is operation of helicopters, and these then become the operative regulations for helicopter operators. Of course, those who have air operator certificates then are also bound by the AOC and admin regulation and a host of other regulations that would affect your operations. So that, I think, should be clear, Ruben. So anybody who would like to ask us a question, the floor is open. I think Ruben is seeking more clarification. He's asking that currently there are 2 regulations: operation of aircraft for commercial air transport and operation of aircraft helicopters. How do they relate, these two? Like we're just saying, before 2018, we had one set on operation of aircraft. After 2018, these regulations were split into 3 to reflect the 3 parts of Annex 6. That is 1, operation of aircraft for commercial air transport, and then operation of aircraft general aviation, and then operation of aircraft helicopters. So a helicopter operator would then be required to comply with the operation of aircraft helicopters Of course, if you are an AOC holder and that kind of a situation, then you'd be required to comply with all other applicable regulations. So I hope, Ruben, that is clear. So any other question? Are we that good? We have no further intervention? I do not see any other question that is being put up or anybody requesting for the floor to make oral intervention. I'll invite probably Colonel to make any summary remarks so that we can be able to advance to the next set of regulations where possible.
Lawrence, on your comments and answering those questions. Maybe you can give a chance to the airworthiness inspector to talk about maybe maintenance on the part of the helicopters before we conclude this one. Any of the airworthiness inspectors that want to talk about the maintenance?
So yeah, thank you, Carol. As the colleagues on airworthiness side prepare to address any of the questions relating to thank you, Colonel. As our colleague Alois prepares to take a response to provide some light on the aircraft helicopter maintenance, we just like to advise you that any questions that have been posted will form part of the matrix that would come back to you in terms of the comments and remarks. So I trust that even after we are done with this live engagement, we'll be able to receive some inputs. Otherwise, that would imply that what we have done on helicopter operation of aircraft helicopter regulation is a good set of regulation that would facilitate those who operate helicopters commercially, and that then would be appropriate. So I don't know if the airworthiness is ready. Okay, so in that regard, I think we can call it a wrap on operation of aircraft helicopter regulations. We continue to receive written submissions via the email kcas2021@kcaa.or.ke that can help enrich these regulations and make them much more appropriate for the industry. Additionally, I think it would be also important that we then do stakeholder engagement, stakeholder sensitization to just allow a session where we can have an in-depth understanding of the requirements and how they become applicable. However, by and large, these regulations are a transposition of Annex 6, Part 3, as provided by ICAO. So we would like to take a 10 minutes break. We take a 10 minutes break to allow us reposition for draft civil aviation licensing of air services regulations. Draft civil aviation licensing of air services regulations. That would be the second set of regulations we look at this afternoon. So we would like to take a 10 minutes break for the next, before we start the next section again.